As the burden of supporting the expanded state made industry here less and less competitive, rather than responding by cutting taxes, the government raised taxes further still, to fund ever higher levels of government spending. In the space of a few decades, the North was transformed from one of the world's most dynamic industrial regions, a tiger economy, into an industrial has-been. On the Tyne, which was once alive with activity, there is now barely any sign of economic life.
So what do you think?
These sort of big gestures don't really solve anything. To be honest, I'm indifferent to it.
And also the symbolism, I think, is a bit sad. You know, industrial angel, industry has died and gone to heaven. It's all a bit kind of, oh. So, Arthur, what do you think?
Doesn't represent the North at all.
You don't think that it cheers the region up? Or...
Not one little bit. Most of the local people hate it.
But it's meant to represent industry, I suppose.
Where? Where?
Where's the industry?
Yeah. Tyneside's just dying. It's dying every day. The industry, the shipyards, the steelworks, they're just taking all off us. There's nothing much left for the working man now. All these apprentices and time-served men, skilled men, they're all lost jobs. It's disgraceful, but, like, nobody in Parliament saying that, like.
Regions where the government is omnipresent, where the government dominates society and the economy and does everything, takes all the decisions, spends all the money, employs everybody. These are very depressing places. They're places being robbed of some of their spirit.
If you think back, in the 1800s, the North East was throwing up people like George and Robert Stevenson, who were huge entrepreneurs. What does it produce these days? If you're an ambitious middle-class person, you want to be a Labour politician.
So they say the sad thing is if they pull a plug on public spending, that all these public sector jobs will go and all these other jobs that rely on that public sector money, they will go. What do you say to that?
Well, obviously there will be a sort of painful adjustment prices in the short term where there will be difficult times, but the problem is that these jobs are actually taking jobs out of the private sector because they mean higher taxes have to be enforced on the productive part of the economy.
So they've got to get proper jobs.
Well, yes, they will need to get jobs in the productive part of the economy, yes.
For more than half a century now, countless billions of pounds have been spent in the North East and other depressed regions. If state spending really did stimulate economic growth, this place should be buzzing. To create new, useful jobs here, we need to revive manufacturing, and this can only be done by shrinking the burden of the state. Public spending must be cut in half. Let's see how it can be done. In Britain today, the public sector is bigger than the private sector. For the real productive economy to thrive, it must be released from the burden of paying for Britain's supersized state. But how?
Now, we're often told we can't possibly cut public spending because it will affect frontline services. Let's see if it's true. Here we have a vessel that represents the public sector. Remember, now we have almost 7.5 million people on the public payroll. How many frontline service workers do we get for our money?
According to the Office of National Statistics, there are now 196,000 policemen and women in the UK, though they complain that much of their time is spent filling in forms. We have 500,000 nurses, though the official figure also includes nurses working in private hospitals. The biggest group is the teachers. We have 962,000 of these, although again the official figure includes teachers working in private schools. There are fewer doctors, only 216,000, again including doctors in private hospitals. And then we come down to much smaller groups, like firemen, of whom we have 57,000, and prison officers, of whom there are 48,000. Add all these frontline workers together and you get just under 2 million. Though remember, this figure has been inflated by including many teachers, nurses and doctors who work in the private sector.
Now, I'm sure there are many worthwhile jobs we haven't included.
But 5.5 million? That's almost twice the number of people who work in manufacturing. What do they all do? The trouble is, it's not always clear from public sector job titles what the jobs involve. We decided to look up some real public sector jobs and then ask a panel of celebrities to guess what they were.
Is it a job involving a product or manufacturing anything?
No.
Do you work with tools?
Yes.
With a hammer?
No.
Stapler?
Yes, I do.
I think I've got it. Are you a community space challenge coordinator?
Yes, I am.
Person-centred planning facilitators and corporate strategy performance advisors, overview and scrutiny managers, and climate change programme support officers.
Do you liaise for a living?
Yes.
Do you coordinate?
Yes.
If you didn't do your job, would anybody notice?
Oh, yes.
In the private sector, if you really fail and are doing nothing useful, nobody pays you anything, nobody buys your product or service, and you go bust, and that's that. But nobody goes bust in a civil service or a public service like that. They just stay around being futile.
You're not a pigeon fancier, are you? They're not pigeon, birds, in those things you were shaking.
No, no.
Are you connected with the community in some way?
That is part of my job, yes.
If you're a private company and you employ vast numbers of people filling in forms and measuring things for no apparent purpose, you're going to go bust, because some other private company will be able to produce their product cheaper by not wasting all of that money on bureaucrats and form filling.
Do you counsel other councils about how to counsel councils?
No.
Do you consult other consultants at other councils about how to counsel other consultants at other councils?
Yes.
There is none of the tension of, well, does the guy deliver? Does that woman deliver? Or is she just waddling in, sitting her fat backside on a chair, moving around a bit of paper and going home?
Are you a community management engagement counsellor?
No.
Are you a community engagement counselling manager?
No.
Are you a consultant management engagement community expert counsellor?
No.
Are you a consultation and communities engagement manager? What is that?
When a private company is rubbish, it goes bust. But when a public body is rubbish, it expands. To fix our state education system, for example, politicians have launched a bewildering number of schemes. Early learning partnerships, parenting early intervention pathfinders, learning agreements and excellence hubs, learning outside the classroom, the framework for personal learning and thinking skills, Train to Gain, the Children's Plan, National Skills Academies, Numeracy Task Force, and so on and so on. Each one adds a new layer of bureaucracy, another quango, another set of reports and targets and reviews. Each one merely advertises the failure of the last. So on top of nurses, we have integration governance managers. As well as policemen, we have community safety performance managers. As well as teachers, we have early years inclusion facilitators. We have known ever since the Soviet Union that state monopolies are hopelessly bureaucratic and wasteful, that the goods and services they deliver are rotten and insufficient, that their customers are powerless and treated with disdain. And yet, in Britain, we have state monopolies in key areas like health and education.
The problem that you have with state providers, especially monopoly providers, if it's a state monopoly, is you deprive the individual citizen of choice. And one of the most powerful things you have if you are buying a product or service is choice. If you don't like this cafeteria, you can go to the one down the road because it's cheaper or nicer. If you don't like that restaurant, go to a different restaurant.
We are used to the idea that government prevents monopolies by private companies. There is legislation against monopolies by private companies.
Because we know that monopolies are a bad idea.
Because the state knows that monopoly is a bad idea. At exactly the same time, it insists on monopolies in education and health.
If you've got a state monopoly provider, you haven't got that choice. You queue up with everybody else and take what you're given and say, Oliver Twistlake, please, sir, can I have some more? And if you don't have that consumer pressure, which you don't with state monopolies at all, then you expect bad results.
James Bartholomew has spent the past decade studying Britain's state sector. As he points out, the biggest state monopoly outside communist China is the NHS.
Monopolies tend to do badly, state monopolies tend to do worst of all. We've now become one of the, if not the, worst healthcare system in the advanced world. Worst in pretty well every respect you can think of. We have fewer MRI scanners by far than average. We have fewer beds. We have fewer acute hospital beds. We treat fewer people with fewer cancer drugs and we give them less of them. Then they go to their doctor, they don't realise that they're being diagnosed late, that they're being treated late, that they're getting poor rated radiotherapy, that they're getting out-of-date cancer drugs. They don't know this. They're innocents, many of whom are dying without knowing it's the fault of the NHS.
I've come to a health tourism show in Olympia. In these days of cheap travel, it's easy to hop on a plane and head abroad for your cancer treatment, say, to a country with much higher cancer survival rates, in hospitals that look more like five-star hotels, and all for little more than the cost of a holiday.
See you again. Bye.
Today we have Saturday, okay, and if a patient is coming here, British patient is coming, I have a serious problem, this and this and this, he can come on Monday and we're going to start immediately.
Does the NHS go to Germany trying to find patients? Do you find many patients wanting to come to England for treatment?
I think Germans would not go to England for treatment, no.
The NHS